every Black Clover and Union Arena deck explained. This is going to be a bit of a longer video, so please use the timestamps below to get to your favorite deck, but definitely stick around because the last deck is my favorite and most underrated deck of all. So we'll be going over the red Asta deck. So this is the full deck list, and we'll be going over some of the key cards of the deck. So we have our 5-cost Asta that says, if on the front line at the start of your turn, place the top card from this rated character into your sideline. If this character has a face down card under it, place one face down card under this character into your sideline instead. And most importantly, when played, choose up to one character with a 4,000 or less BP on your opponent's front line and sideline it. Then we have our 4-cost Asta that says, when played, place the top card of your deck face down under this character. Choose up to one character on your opponent's front line. It loses all base abilities until the start of your next turn. Also, when attacking once per turn, you may place one face down card under this character into your sideline. If you do, this character gains impact 1. So as you see, the whole point of this deck is to place cards underneath the Asta raids to power them up so that they continuously apply pressure and win the game. So how do we put cards under our Astas? The first one is the Liebe that says your Asta cards with raid can perform raid on this card, and most importantly, it allows us to, when played, draw a card, then place one card from your hand face down under this character. We also have 4-cost 2 action point Nash Faust that says, when played, draw a card. This card is also set to active onto your field. Also, when attacking, choose up to one Asta or Liebe card on your field. It gains 1000 BP until the end of the turn. Place the top card of your deck face down under the chosen character. So basically, when it's played, it can refuel the Asta by putting a card underneath. We also have this 5-cost Yami that says, when played, you may place one face down card under a character on your field into your sideline if you do draw a card. But also, most importantly, when attacking, choose up to one other character on your field with Black Bull's affinity and place the top card of your deck face down under it. So similar to Faust, every time you attack, you get to refuel one of your Astas. So this is a tech choice that I found pretty interesting in this deck. The 1-cost Vanessa that says, if on the front line, characters on your field other than Vanessa cannot be chosen by abilities on event cards your opponent uses from their hand. So one of the weaknesses of the deck is that you're pretty much very reliant on the Asta staying on the field, and given that you want to be able to reuse their effects every turn, you want to keep them on the board. So this is a card that allows them to protect them, similar to what you have in the green Code Geass deck. So something to consider when building the deck. So the strengths of the deck are definitely in its unique ability to remove opponent's abilities. So your 4-cost Asta is the only card in the game that allows you to negate opponent's abilities. So this is something that is unique to this deck, and it can definitely surprise your opponent if they're not used to seeing abilities like this. Other than that, we have strong character removal in the form of the 5-cost Asta that allows us to sideline a character with 4,000 or less BP. The weaknesses, so the support characters don't really do much on their own. So the whole point of the deck is to boost up your Asta. So all the other cards don't really do much if you don't have an Asta on the field, because there's no point in putting cards underneath if you can't use them. And so far, only the Astas have that ability. So basically, in the same manner, the raid Astas need combo pieces to be effective, because after you play them, they don't really have a way to refuel their card underneath unless you have support cards to continue to do so. The next deck that we'll be looking at is the red event deck. So we'll be going over similarly over key cards. So the first card is the 5-cost Noelle. So this is definitely a house of a card. So it is a raid card. If you have used an event card this turn, this character gains 1000 BP and impact 1 until the end of the turn. When played, this character gains all abilities listed below until the end of the turn if you have the required number of event cards in your sideline. So 2 or more, this character cannot be blocked by a character with 3000 less BP. 4 or more, your opponent must block this character's attack if able. So basically, when you play it, it's definitely a house because you have 5000 BP with impact 1, and your opponent can only basically block with a character with 3500 or more BP. So you gain the advantage by knocking out a pretty high BP character on your opponent's field, and you impact 1 to deal 1 damage. The next card is more of a utility card, so it's the 4-cost Mimosa. It says when played, draw a card, which is definitely good. And also choose one of the following. Reduce the AP cost of the next event card with 2 or less required energy you use from your hand this turn by 1. Or you can choose, you may place 1 event card from your hand into your sideline. If you do, add up to 1 red character card with 1 AP cost from your sideline to your hand. So you can either extend your turn by reducing the AP cost of the next event card with 2 or less energy, or you can dig into your sideline for something that you really need. So something that you could do is discard 1 event card, and then you can add your 5 cost Noelle to continue pushing for damage. So as you see, this deck is really reliant on event cards. So which ones are you playing? Of course, you'd be playing the 3 cost AP restand card. My magic is never giving up. You also have the 2 cost special. So this is pretty unique in this deck that the special does not have direct removal. Instead, it does choose 1 character on your field. It gains 2,500 BP, and this character cannot be blocked by a character with 2,500 or less BP until the end of the turn, which is decent. But you really want to go for the second effect, which is if the chosen character is Noelle, it also gains your opponent must block this character's attack if able until the end of the turn. So it's basically a force block, and you'll likely knock out a character with 3,000 or more BP on the turn that you play this card. Or you can push for damage if your opponent does not have a character with that much BP, so you're forcing 1 damage through. Other cards are like the Searcher card, the 2 cost All-Knowing Priestess, that says look at the top 2 cards of your deck, reveal 1 card among them and add it to your hand, place the remaining card on top of your deck. If the card you revealed was Noelle, Mimosa, Laurel Pechica, or an event card with 2 or less required energy, choose up to 1 of your AP cards and switch it to active. So it basically allows you to dig for a raid card or a card to be raided on, and if it is one of those, you get to play this card for free. Other than that, we have our 2 cost Sea Dragon's Lair that says choose 1 character on your front line. It gains your ability your opponent cannot choose this character with abilities on characters, abilities on event cards, or trigger abilities until the start of your next turn. If Noelle is on your field, choose 1 of your AP cards and switch it to active. So basically when you play it, the character that you chose is pretty much invincible until the start of your next turn. So you would usually want to play this on Noelle, something that has a good effect and that you want to protect until your next turn. So the strengths of this deck, one of it is consistent search. So a really good card of this deck is the 3 cost Mimosa that says when played, look at the top 4 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 red event card among them and add it to your hand. Place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you added a card to your hand, place 1 card from your hand into your sideline. So what's noticeable here is that you can add any event card without any restriction. So you can look for a special, you can look for an AP restand, or any of the other event cards that we talked about in the slide before. So it's definitely a very powerful card that allows you to search for pretty much whatever you want. Other than that, we have the All-Knowing Priestess that does the same thing. So let's say if you got this off the Mimosa, you can play it to allow you to search for pretty much the strongest cards of your deck. So turn extension and sideline recycling is the strength of this deck. So for the Mimosa, it allows you to play a card for free. Also, it allows you to, as we talked about before, discard a card and dig for something in your sideline to continue pushing for advantage. Something similar is this 4 cost Laurel Pechica that says when played, you may place 1 card from your hand into your sideline. If you do, add up to 1 red event card with 2 or less energy from your sideline to your hand. So this allows you to recycle some of your powerful event cards to continue gaining advantage. And noticeably, the force block is something that we see a lot in this deck. The 2 cost special is a card that we can recycle a lot based on all the other synergies that we saw. And it is something that basically forces your opponent to block for allow you to gain advantage, or you can use it for its first effect to push through damage if your opponent can't block. So this is something that we see a lot of synergy with the Noelle to really gain advantage into the mid game or late game if your opponent can't block or if you're forcing block to knock out one of their cards. The weaknesses of this deck. Weakness of this deck is definitely a lack of direct removal. So given that our special cannot target opponent's cards, we can't really interact in the same way other decks can by choosing cards to remove. We have to force our opponent into an awkward situation where they need to block with the card that we want to remove to gain a similar amount of advantage. Also, event cards in this deck really need characters on board to work, like the Sea Dragon's Lair. So if you have these cards, but you have nothing to play them on, it can be a bit clunky, especially if you don't have the right setup. So the next deck is the Big Green Black Clover deck. So why is it the Big Green deck? Basically, you're playing a lot of big green cards. So the first one is the 7-cost Mereoleona that inherently has impact 1 and damage 2. Also, it says activate main. If on the front line, once per turn, choose one other character on your field and switch it to active. It gains 1000 BP until the end of the turn. So definitely a house of a card. And we have our 5-cost Yami that says when played, you may pay 1 AP. If you do, choose one of the following. Choose up to one rated card on your opponent's front line and place its top rated card into their sideline. So noticeably, you are not sidelining the card. You are placing it into the sideline, so this will not trigger opponent's sideline effects, like for example on Nanami. Otherwise, you can choose to draw 2 cards. So for example, if your opponent does not have a rated card, you can instead choose to draw 2 cards instead of allowing for the effect to fizzle. We also have activate main. If on the front line, once per turn, choose one character on your field, it gains 1000 BP until the end of the turn. So if you noticed, a consistent theme here is giving your characters 1000 BP. So this is something that we want to do because, of course, our cards have synergy with this. So the most common synergy is our 4-cost Fuegoleon that says if this character has 5000 or more BP, it gains impact 1. So just one buff on it allows it to get impact 1. And noticeably, the 4-cost 2 action point Yami says if a character on your field has BP higher than its base BP, reduce this card's AP cost by 1 while in your hand. It also says during your turn, this character gains 1000 BP and damage 2. So this card is definitely very strong if you can play it for only 1 action point, given that on your turn it's 5000 BP and damage 2. So the strengths of this deck, obviously we have a very powerful endgame, since we have a 7-drop that is inherently has impact 1 and damage 2. Same thing with even the non-rated cards in this deck that are fairly strong just on their own. We also have good forms of removal, not only due to our special, but due to cards like Yami that allow us to knock off rated cards. So the weaknesses of the deck. Like any tall green deck, we can have a weak early and mid game just because we're setting up to allow us to play our tall green cards. And in doing so, we can have some clunky hands if we don't have the right setup. So if we draw too many high cost cards and not able to set up our ramp to play the cards, we can definitely lose just by not being able to play the game. So this is something to consider when playing a tall green deck. Next, we have our small green deck. So this is the opposite of the tall green deck because we're playing a much lower curve. So the first rate of the deck is the 4-cost Yuno that says, when played, if Asta's on your field, look at the top card of your deck, then place it on the top or bottom of your deck. When attacking, reveal the top card of your deck, then place it on the top or bottom of your deck. If the revealed card is a green character or side card with 3 required energy and 1 AP cost, you may place 1 card from your hand into your sideline, then play the revealed card set to resting onto your field or perform raid with it instead. So that's a lot of text, but it's basically allowing to flood the board. Now we have our 3-cost Asta that says, cannot activate drought abilities during trigger checks resulting from damage dealt with this character. So as far as I know, this is the first card that has this ability. So it's basically saying that if you're pushing for advantage by early attacking, your opponent can't really use their draw triggers to gain the advantage back. It also says during your turn, if Yuno is on your field, all characters on your field gain 500 BP. Also says when attacking, reveal the top card of your deck. If the revealed card has 3 required energy, this character gains impact 1 until the end of the turn. Place the revealed card on the top or bottom of your deck. So as you saw just from these 2 cards, you really are looking for synergies with 3 energy cards in your deck. So how many do you play in this deck? Well, we actually have 25, so half of the entire deck. We'll be counting this 2-cost Asta that says specifically you may treat this card as if its required energy is 3 while in your deck. So this is something we have to definitely consider when building this deck, that we have sufficient amount of 3 energy cards to allow for the full synergies to activate. Otherwise, in this deck, we really want to manipulate the top card of our deck to fulfill the requirements of our 2 raid cards. So the first card that we see, Julius, is a very strong card because it says when played, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, add up to 1 card among them to your hand, place the remaining cards on the top of your deck in any order. If you added a card to your hand, place 1 card from your hand on the top of your deck or into your sideline. So not only does this very strongly allow us to manipulate the top of our deck to place things in the order that we want, but it also says that we can add any of the cards that we looked at to our hand. So this could be a special, this could be a raid card. There's no restriction, so this is a very strong card just by itself. Other than that, we have our 1-cost Uno that says when played, if Asta is on your field, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, play any number of them to the top of your deck in any order, then place any remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. So it allows us to manipulate the top of our deck for a very low cost. We also have our site, the 3-cost, the Clover Kingdom, that says place this site active onto your field. When played, look at the top card of your deck and place it on the top or bottom of your deck. It also says activate main, switch to resting. All characters on your field gain 500 BP until the end of their turn. So another card that allows you to manipulate your deck, and it also costs 3 energy. And now we have the card that we looked at before, the 4-cost Uno, whose first ability allows us to look at the top card of our deck and either place it to the top or to the bottom. So even our raid cards allow us to manipulate the top of our deck. So the strengths, like any low to the ground green deck, we have a good early game to allow us to push for early damage as needed. And also our abilities allow us to flood the board. And then we also have cards that pump our own cards, like the Clover Kingdom, to increase their BP to get over some blockers that your opponent may have. And in doing so, we can also manipulate the next draw, so we can potentially set up for the mid game by getting cards that we want to be able to go through your opponent's defenses when they eventually set them up. The weaknesses of the deck, definitely lack of removal. So our special here is pretty okay, but outside of it, we don't have any forms of removal. So if your opponent puts a big card on their field, we might have some difficulty in getting over it. And also we have a lack of draw. So a weakness of rush decks is that once we get through the rush, we don't really have more to refuel our field if it gets knocked out. The Sister Lily that says when played, reveal the top card of your deck. If the revealed card is Asta or Uno, add it to your hand. If the revealed card is any other card, place it to the top or bottom of our deck. So even then, it's not pure draw because it has a condition. And the condition also says that we can only add an Asta or Uno. So we can't really add anything else to help us get out of our situation if that is the case. So one of the weaknesses of our deck is that we have a weak late game, given that our curve tops out at 4 energy and that our main raid only costs 3 energy, which is good in the early game, but not so good in the late game when we're facing 5,000 BP cards from your opponent's side. All right, the next deck that we have is the Devil Triad purple deck. So this is definitely a unique deck because it has an alternate win condition, which is the first of the game so far. It says at the end of your attack phase, if you have no cards in your deck and 3 or more Dark Triad affinity cards with unique card names on your field, you win the game. So definitely something spicy there. Activate main, switch to resting. Place 4 cards from your sideline into your removal area. If you do, draw a card, then place 1 card from your hand into your sideline. You can only activate this Tree of Quillfoot ability 1 time each turn. So it allows us to dig for cards in our deck to draw to get to our win condition. So the raid cards of the deck is the 5-cost Dante that says when played, choose up to 2 characters on your opponent's front line. They lose 1000 BP until the start of your next turn. Also, when attacking, place the top 2 cards of your deck into your sideline. So this has a mill effect that allows us to get to our win condition earlier, and it also has a decent ability to minus BP. It's not that strong on its own, but it gets a lot better when you consider that this is the special of the deck. It says, choose one character on your opponent's front line. It loses 3000 BP until the start of your next turn. If Dante is on your field, choose one of the following, 4000 BP instead, or draw a card. So let's say your opponent has a 4000 BP card. You can play the Dante, bring it down to 3000, and then you can use your special. So instead of using the ability to knock it down to negative 1000, you could knock it down by 3000, which sidelines the character, and you can draw a card. So that's something to consider when playing your special, that you can use it to draw a card and still knock out an opposing card, given that Dante already reduced their BP by 1000. The next raid card is the 4-cost Xenon that has Nullify Impact. It also says activate main once per turn, place 4 cards from your sideline into your removal area. If you do, this character gains cannot be blocked by a character with 3000 or less BP until the end of the turn. It also says when attacking, draw a card. When this character attacks and is blocked, place 1 card from your hand into your sideline. So it allows us to get to our win condition by drawing cards, and it allows us to push through damage if your character doesn't have a card with a high enough BP to block it. So another aspect of the deck is that we're going to be sidelining our own cards to gain advantage. So this is a fairly strong card, the 3-cost Xenon, that says when played, you may sideline one other character on your field if you do draw 2 cards. So this is a very powerful draw effect, but of course we have synergies that synergize with this effect. So for example, our 0-cost Vanica says when sideline, draw a card, then place 1 card from your hand into your sideline. We have our 3-cost 2-action point Vanica that says when played, draw 2 cards, then place 1 card from your hand into your sideline. And most importantly, when sideline, play up to 1 purple card with 2 or less required energy, 1 AP cost, and Dark Triad or Devil Affinity from your hand set to resting onto your field. Another card that we could potentially sideline is actually the 0-cost Nero. It doesn't have a when sideline ability, but this is one of those cards that say activate main, switch to resting once per turn. This character gains energy until the end of the turn. At the end of the main phase, sideline this character. So you can do a cute little trick where you rest this character to gain 1 extra energy, and you use that energy to play your 3-cost, 2-cost, 4-cost cards, and then you can sideline it just before the end of the main phase with the Xenon to draw 2 cards. And then since your Nero was already going to get sidelined anyways, you don't really have any negative benefits of its when sideline condition. So the strengths of the deck is the interesting alternate win condition that we've never seen before, and it has very, very strong card draw. It also has a versatile removal in the form of the 5-cost Dante. However, to be truthful, this is pretty much where all the benefits end, because the deck has a very strong lack of tempo, especially if you look at the 2-action point color trigger, Vanica of the deck. So usually when we play a card with 2 action points, you want to really get a big benefit out of it, since we're using the majority of our action points of that turn. And Vanica really just doesn't do much. She gains a lot of card advantage, but in this game, which is very tempo based, she doesn't really help us with board presence either, unless we can sideline her, but that also brings us down in terms of tempo. So another aspect of the deck that is fairly weak is that the raid cards all lack impact. So this means that at the end of the game, if our cards don't have impact, your opponent will just block, and thus it'll be very hard for us to end the game. So we're really requiring that our alternate win condition save us when at the end of the game we're not able to push through that final damage. Also, we have a lack of milling, so our deck really wants us to remove cards from the top of the deck, but it requires it to do it in a pretty extensive manner where we have to draw and then discard them. So if we had something that milled cards like this Garu, I think the deck would be a lot better. And overall, I feel like the cards just don't really do anything. We're drawing a lot, but we're really not affecting the board, and thus I think that we're pretty susceptible to getting hit because we can't really defend ourselves. So if you really want to give this deck a try, for sure go for it, but right now I'm not really seeing it to be a big contender just from what I see from deck building theory. Alright, so we're at our last deck, and for the final deck, I think this is the most underrated deck of all, just because it has very decent cards and that nobody has really talked about this deck yet. So we're going to go into the key cards. So the first one is the 4-cost Asta Raid that says if you have 4 or more other Black Bull affinity cards on your field, this character gains impact 1. This character battling this character loses nullify impact for the duration of the battle. Also, when sideline, you may place 1 Black Bull's affinity card from your hand into your sideline. If you do, you may play up to 1 base card of this rated character set to resting onto your front line. So you will not play the rated card, but the card underneath will stay on the field. So the card that you rated on. Now we have our 4-cost 2-action point Yami that says, when played, if you have 6 or more other Black Bull's affinity cards on your field, choose up to 1 character with 4,000 or less BP on your opponent's front line and sideline it. So definitely a strong ability, but just note that if you don't have 6 or more other Black Bull's affinity cards, you don't get to do anything, so you can't sideline a lesser BP card. Also, when attacking, choose the 1 character on your field with Black Bull's affinity. It gains 1000 BP until the end of the turn. So the next card that I'll be showing is fairly interesting. It is a 3 energy 2-action point Vanessa. It says when played, play up to 1 purple character card with 2 or less required energy, 1 AP cost, and Black Bull's affinity from your sideline set to resting onto your field, or perform raid with it. If you have 6 or more other Black Bull's affinity cards on your field, 4 or less required energy instead. So obviously you want to go for the second effect, the one that requires 6 or more other Black Bull's affinity cards on your field. So the main card that you want to be targeting is your 4-cost Asta Raid card. So being able to bring back this card from the sideline to replay it is a very strong strategy, given that the when sideline ability of your Asta allows for the unrated card to stay on the field behind, so that you could potentially play the Vanessa to bring it back onto the same card that was left behind. If you don't have the Asta, you can also bring back a strong card like this 4-cost Luck Voltia that says during your turn, this character gains 1000 BP. And when played, if you have 6 or more other Black Bull's affinity cards on your field, switch this character to active. So by playing an active 4000 BP card, which is fairly good if you don't have the Asta to raid on. Another card that you can bring back with the Vanessa is the 3-cost Gauche that says when played, choose up to 1 character on your field with Black Bull's affinity. Play up to 1 purple character card with 2 or less required energy, 1 AP cost, and the same card name as the chosen character from your hand or sideline set to resting onto your field. At the end of the attack phase, sideline that character. So it's a way of bringing a lot of cards onto your board just with a few cards if you have the sideline set up. So Gauche is a very interesting card because it allows us to fuel the synergies of our deck, but it can only be really played on 1 character, which is the Asta, since we don't play any other cards with the same name. So this is why we play multiple versions of the Asta to be able to fulfill the requirements of the Gauche. So noticeably at the end of the attack phase, the character that we brought back with Gauche is sideline. So we usually want to use the card that we brought back as a raid target, because if we raid on top of the card we brought back, that card does not get sidelined at the end of the attack phase. So we want to be able to use our raid Asta onto the card that we brought back with Gauche. So this is why Vanessa is a very good card in this deck, because both of these cards, Vanessa and Gauche, really combo well together to bring back cards that are in the sideline. So the strengths of the deck are definitely good removal. So not only do we have our special that allows us to choose 1 character on your opponent's front line, it loses 1000 BP for each Black Bull's affinity card on your field until the end of the turn. We also have our 4-cost Yami that allows us to sideline a character with 4000 or less BP. And overall, we have good card draw and cycling. So our site, the 2-cost Black Bull's Hideout, says when played, if all the cards on your field have Black Bull's affinity, choose one of the following: draw a card, or you may place 1 Black Bull's affinity card from your hand into your sideline. If you do, draw 2 cards. So if you remember, we really want to set up our sideline. So this is one of the cards that will definitely help that out by allowing us to discard a card that we want to bring back. We also have the 2-cost Henry that says if you have 4 or more other Black Bull's affinity cards on your field, this character gains 1 energy generation. Also, activate main, switch to resting, pay 1 AP once per turn, choose 1 Black Bull's hideout card on your field, and activate its 1 played ability. So if you have these 2 cards together, you can definitely get some good card draw going or cycling to set up your sideline. And also don't forget that once we have our sideline set up, it acts as a toolbox since we can use Vanessa to bring back cards that we want to reuse. The weaknesses of the deck, like other decks that need this requirement, the weakness is that a lot of our abilities require board presence, just like the Yami that needs 6 others. So if we don't have enough board presence or enough cards on the board to fulfill the requirements, a lot of their effects fizzle out. So this is something definitely that you want to consider, to not block with cards if it's not absolutely necessary. Otherwise, we need to set up our sideline for optimal ability usage. So this may be a problem in the early game where we don't have enough time to set up our sideline, and we might have some clunky hands with cards that can't really use their when played abilities. Alright, thanks for watching, and like and subscribe for more videos.